Welcome back to Stories Untold. Before the story grabs you by the throat, drop a comment and tell everyone where you're watching from. What city, what state, what country. Now breathe in, because tonight's story begins with a man who thought he could keep two lives in the same pocket. They say the scariest kind of heartbreak isn't loud. It doesn't throw dishes or scream in the driveway. The scariest heartbreak is quiet, organized, sealed in a manila folder, signed with a steady hand, and delivered right when the person who caused it feels safest. At 4:11 a.m., the headlights of Derek Brooks' black Range Rover crawled across Maple Hollow Drive like a guilty confession. The neighborhood sat asleep behind frost-tipped hedges, the kind of Connecticut silence that made even an expensive car sound too loud. Derek killed the engine and sat there for a second, letting his pulse slow down. His collar still held a faint trace of perfume, amber and something sweet, clinging to him from Sienna Hart's apartment. He'd promised himself he would roll the window down on the drive home, let the cold air erase the evidence. He hadn't. He checked the rearview mirror, practiced the face he'd show his wife, tired but heroic. The hard-working provider. The man who had to stay late with investors. He stepped out into the cold, adjusted his watch like it made him respectable, and walked toward the front door of the colonial home he always called our forever. The key didn't turn. Derek frowned, tried again, then jiggled it harder. The metal scraped uselessly in the new lock. What the hell? He muttered. He leaned closer. The doorknob wasn't scratched, wasn't old. It was brand new, polished, unfamiliar. And then he saw it. Across the lawn, right where his wife Natalie used to plant tulips in the spring, a wooden post stood like a warning, a real estate sign, white and clean. The kind you see in rich neighborhoods where houses move like chess pieces. A red banner ran across it in bold letters. Sold. Derek's breath caught. He walked off the stone path and onto the damp grass, his leather shoes sinking just enough to remind him this wasn't a nightmare. He touched the sign. Cold. Real. He snapped his head toward the windows. The living room was wrong. Not dim, not tidy, empty, no sofa, no piano, no framed wedding photos. Not even the pale rug Natalie had begged him not to spill wine. The window reflected his own face back at him. Stunned, pale, suddenly older. Natalie, he called, voice too loud in the quiet street. No answer. Derek's eyes darted to the driveway. Natalie's SUV was gone. The stroller they kept in the garage, gone. His mind tried to offer harmless explanations. A prank. A renovation. A misunderstanding. But his chest already knew the truth. This was not a misunderstanding, this was a sentence. He rushed around the side of the house to the garage door keypad. He punched in the code, his birthday, because Natalie had always said it was easy to remember. The keypad blinked red. Access denied. His throat went dry. Derek ran back to the front, grabbed a decorative stone from the flower bed, and smashed the small glass panel beside the door. The crack echoed down Maple Hollow Drive like a gunshot. He reached in, unlocked the deadbolt, and stumbled inside. Warm air hit him, heat still running. Like the house was breathing without him, but there was nothing else. The foyer table was gone, the mirror was gone. Even the coat hooks were empty. He sprinted into the kitchen. The granite island, once cluttered with baby bottles and Natalie's color-coded planner, was bare, clean to the point of cruelty. On the counter sat a single item, a manila envelope, his name printed on a label, neat and centered. Derek Brooks. His hands shook as he tore it open. Inside were two things. First, a stack of divorce papers. Second, a thin folder titled Evidence. He flipped it open, highlighted call-off, printed screenshots, hotel receipts, a photo of him stepping out of Sienna's building at midnight, his tie loose, her hand on his back. The last page was a note in Natalie's handwriting. Calm, almost beautiful. Derek, you don't get to come home and pretend anymore. The locks are changed. The house is sold, my lawyer has the rest. If you want to speak to me, you'll do it through the court. Natalie, his knees weakened. This wasn't rage. This was completion. He spun toward the hallway, adrenaline dragging him like a leash. Natalie, Ava. He ran upstairs. The master bedroom was stripped down to blank walls and a vacuumed floor. The closet rails were bare. His suits, gone. His shoe collection, gone. His cufflinks, gone. He yanked open the drawer where Natalie kept Ava's tiny socks. Empty. He bolted to the nursery. The door creaked open on a hollow room. No crib. No rocking chair. No pastel wall decals. The only thing left was a single white square on the carpet, like a marker at a crime scene. A pacifier. Ava's pacifier. Derek picked it up with the kind of care people use when holding a fragile lie. His phone trembled in his hand as he dialed Natalie, straight to a recording. The number you have reached is not in service. He tried again. Same. He dialed her best friend, Kendra. No answer. He dialed Natalie's mother. A cold, clipped voicemail greeting. Leave a message. Derek didn't. His mind went to the only person who always fixed his problems. His attorney, Arthur Keene. The phone rang 4 times before a tired voice answered, as if it already knew what time it was. Arthur Keene. Arthur. Derek gasped. Where is my wife? Silence. Then a slow exhale. You found the envelope. You knew, Derek snapped. You helped her do this? I advised her, Arthur said carefully. She's my client. Derek's head spun. She can't sell the house without me. It's marital property. That's the thing, Arthur replied. The deed is in Natalie's name. Derek's jaw tightened. Because you told me it was better for liability. And it was, Arthur said, voice turning colder. For her. Derek paced the empty nursery. Ava's pacifier clenched in his fist like a hostage. Stop the sale. Freeze it. Do something. It closed yesterday afternoon, Arthur said. Cash buyer. Quick close. Funds already transferred into a trust. A trust? Derek whispered, suddenly remembering a document he'd signed 2 years ago without reading. Something Natalie called protection. Arthur's tone sharpened. You also signed a post-nuptial agreement, Derek swallowed. It was symbolic. It was legal, Arthur corrected. There's a fidelity clause. It's triggered. Derek's stomach sank. Triggered by what? Arthur didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. By the evidence Natalie submitted. Photos, communications, receipts, and a sworn statement from a private investigator. A private investigator. Natalie had hired someone. While smiling at him over dinner. While folding Ava's laundry. While kissing him goodbye. Derek's mouth went numb. I want to see my daughter. Arthur paused just long enough to feel like a blade sliding in. You should understand something, he said. Natalie has already filed for temporary sole custody in a protective order. A protective order? I never touched her. You broke into the house tonight, Arthur said flatly. Your neighbors heard glass break. There's a security log. Natalie anticipated this. Derek's face burned. Where is she? I'm not allowed to disclose her location, Arthur said. And Derek, this is important. Do not try to find her. If you show up, if you contact her directly, if you attempt to remove the child, you will make her case stronger. Derek wanted to scream, but only a cracked sound came out. You're abandoning me. Arthur's answer was simple. I'm obeying the law. The call ended. Derek stood in the nursery, surrounded by nothing. The house didn't feel like it had been emptied. It felt like it had rejected him. Outside, the first light of morning crept over Maple Hollow Drive, and Derek realized the sun would rise whether he deserved it or not. Across town, on the other side of a river that froze every winter, Natalie Brooks sat in a parked rental car and watched the security camera feed on her phone. She watched Derek break the glass, watched him stumble inside, watched him flip through the papers with shaking hands, and she didn't cry. Not because she was heartless, because she'd done her crying already. Natalie's tears had been spent in the quiet hours, at 2 a.m. when Ava refused to sleep, at 5 a.m. when Derek rolled over and answered a text with a smile. He never gave his wife at noon when she found yet another dry cleaning receipt that didn't match his late meeting story. Now all she had left was clarity. The plan had started on a Tuesday in early May, when Ava was 6 weeks old and Natalie's world was shrinking into a routine of bottles, burp claws, and the constant low hum of exhaustion. Derek's firm, Brooks Capital Partners, was thriving. He wore success-like cologne and expected applause for simply coming home. One afternoon, he tossed his suit jacket over the kitchen chair and went upstairs to shower. Natalie should have left it there. She didn't. She picked it up to hang it in the closet, because that's what wives do when they still believe in teamwork. And that's when she felt something stiff inside the pocket. A receipt, not for a hotel or a dinner. A receipt for a bracelet, diamond tennis bracelet, $8,600. Natalie stared at the paper until the numbers blurred. Derek had never bought her jewelry without being asked first, and even then he treated it like a negotiation. She didn't confront him. That night, she made his favorite garlic steak and the roasted potatoes he called restaurant perfect. Derek ate, half listening, thumb flicking on his phone under the table. Natalie rocked Ava in her arms, watching her husband smile at a screen like it was more alive than his family. When Derek finally went to sleep, Natalie lay beside him and stared into the dark. She reached over to his nightstand and picked up his phone. He'd changed his passcode the month before. Natalie tried once, Eva's birthday. Wrong. She tried again, his own birthday. The screen opened. Because Derek Brooks never believed Natalie would stop being nice. The messages were there, lined up like proof in a courtroom. Sienna, I miss your hands. Derek, soon. Promise, Sienna, she's clueless. Derek, she's grateful, that's enough. Natalie's fingers went cold. She scrolled. There were photos. A hotel mirror selfie with Derek's watch visible at Sienna's wrist. A voice now. Sienna laughing, calling him my future. And then this sense that man Natalie's stomach twist. Derek. Natalie's eyes flicked to the sleeping man beside her. Free. He wanted to leave her, and he wanted to do it like she was a problem to be handled. Natalie set the phone back down. She didn't wake him. She didn't shake him. She didn't beg. Instead, she opened her own notes app and wrote one line. If he wants paperwork, he'll get paperwork. Natalie had built a career in operations before motherhood. She'd been the woman companies called when their systems collapsed. She knew how to move assets, negotiate timelines, and execute without drama. So she treated her marriage like a failing company. She audited, she documented, she planned an exit. She met with Arthur Keene in his office 3 days later, pushing Ava's stroller through the glass lobby, like she was just another appointment. Arthur listened while Natalie showed him screenshots. His expression didn't shift. Not surprise. Not judgment. Just recognition. How bad is it? She asked. Arthur slid a thick folder across the desk. You signed a postnup. Most people don't. Most men laugh at it. Derek laughed at it. Derek had grinned when he signed, saying, If I ever cheat, you can take my socks. Arthur tapped a page. The fidelity clause is not about socks. Natalie stared at the language until her eyes caught on the words. Immediate transfer of marital assets to the injured spouse. Temporary custody presumed for the injured spouse. And something else, liquidation permitted to secure the welfare of the child. Natalie's throat tightened. So if I can prove it, Arthur nodded once. You can end it cleanly, but you must be careful. Derek will not handle losing control. The most dangerous moment is when he realizes he can't talk his way out. Natalie looked down at Ava sleeping peacefully. I won't give him a moment to fight. Arthur held her gaze. If you do this, you do it all at once. Natalie's answer was quiet. I already started. Over the next month, she moved like a shadow through her own life. She opened a new bank account at a different branch. She transferred her small inheritance into a trust for Ava. She photographed every expensive item in the home. She checked the deed. She learned the mortgage was paid off because her father had secretly helped Derek years ago, and Derek never even said thank you. Most importantly, Natalie waited for the window. Derek finally handed her the opportunity on a silver platter. One Friday morning, he announced he'd be in Boston for 2 nights to meet investors. Natalie nodded, kissed his cheek, and told him to drive safe. The moment his car disappeared down Maple Hollow Drive, Natalie made one phone call. Within an hour, 3 trucks arrived. A moving crew, a locksmith, a realtor, and a woman from an estate liquidation company who greeted Natalie with a clipboard and the calm eyes of someone used to rich people falling apart. Natalie stood in the foyer, Ava in a carrier against her chest, and pointed. Everything marked blue goes into storage, she said. Everything marked red gets sold today. Everything marked black, she swallowed, goes to the dump. The woman didn't flinch. Understood. Natalie had already placed colored stickers on furniture, art, and boxes the week before. While Derek was working late, he'd never noticed. He'd never looked. By noon, the house sounded like an orchestra of motion. Dollies rolling, tape ripping, footsteps thudding, drawers opening and shutting. Natalie didn't wander around sobbing. She supervised. She made lists. She signed forms. Because grief without action had already failed her. At 3:40 p.m., she signed the sale documents digitally. At 6:00 p.m., the house was a shell. At 7:15 p.m., Natalie buckled Ava into the rental car and drove away. She didn't go to her mother. Derek knew that address. She didn't go to her best friend. Derek knew her phone number. Natalie drove to a short-term rental in a nearby town under a different name, because Arthur had taught her the first rule of escape: never leave a trail made of your old habits. Now, as dawn painted the sky, Natalie watched Derek's reaction through the camera feed. She watched him discover the note. She watched him run room to room like a man chasing air. And she whispered something that felt like a prayer and a warning at the same time. "Don't come looking for us." Her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. She opened it. One line: "You think this is over?" Natalie stared at the words, then at Ava sleeping in her car seat. Her heart stayed steady, because Natalie Brooks hadn't just left. She had declared war. And Derek Brooks had no idea how much she'd already taken from him, beyond the house. If you're hooked, hit like, subscribe to Stories Untold, and tell us where you're watching from. Next part is where Derek realizes the divorce papers were only the first domino. If you're watching right now, pause for 1 second and comment where you're watching from, city and state, because next part is where Derek learns a brutal truth. Natalie didn't just leave him, she engineered a collapse. And she did it so cleanly that even the people who used to fear Derek won't pick up the phone anymore. Derek didn't sleep. He couldn't. He sat in the driver's seat of his Range Rover with Ava's pacifier on the passenger seat. Like it was a piece of evidence from a crime scene, staring at the sold sign as daylight finished what the night started, humiliating him in full color. Neighbors began to stir. A garage door lifted across the street. A dog barked. A jogger slowed down, eyes lingering too long on Derek's car parked crookedly like a mistake. Derek kept his head down, because the one thing he still had left was pride, and it was evaporating by the minute. He told himself one thought on repeat: if I can get cash, I can fix this. Cash meant hotels. Cash meant lawyers. Cash meant control. So he did what he always did when life turned inconvenient. He drove to the bank. The First Hartford private bank branch opened at 9, but Derek arrived at 8:42. Parked in the front like rules didn't apply to men like him. He walked inside the second the doors unlocked. The lobby smelled like polished wood and expensive silence. A young teller recognized him immediately. "Mr. Brooks," she said with a practiced smile. "Good morning." Derek leaned his elbows on the counter like he owned it. "I need to withdraw from my joint savings account." She nodded and typed, the click of keys loud in the quiet. Her smile began to slip. She typed again, slower this time, as if the screen might change its mind if she was gentler. Then she looked up, and Derek saw it, the pity. "Mr. Brooks," she said softly, "there's a hold on the account." Derek blinked. "A hold, yes, sir." "A legal hold." Derek's patience snapped like a thread. "It's a joint account. Remove it." "I can't," she said, voice tightening. The primary account holder initiated a freeze pending family court proceedings. Derek felt his pulse hammer in his throat. "What's the balance?" The teller swallowed. "0. Derek's mouth fell open like his body forgot how to be dignified. "0, he repeated too loud. Heads turned. A security guard took one step closer. Derek forced his voice down, but it still shook. "That's impossible. There was over 60,000 in there." The teller's eyes flicked to her screen. It was transferred yesterday afternoon into a trust account. Derek's hands curled into fists. Transferred by who? She hesitated, like she was bracing for impact. "By Mrs. Brooks, sir." Derek stared at her, and for the first time since the sold sign, something deep in him realized he wasn't dealing with a fight. He was dealing with a system. He leaned closer, voice low and dangerous. "Check my business accounts. Brooks Capital Partners." The teller straightened, suddenly more formal. "I don't have access to those under your profile, sir." Derek's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean you don't have access? I'm the founder." She clicked again, then turned the monitor slightly so he could see a line of text he never thought he'd read about himself. "Authorized signer, not owner." Derek's stomach turned. "Not owner," he barked, a laugh that sounded like it hurt. "That's wrong. That's a mistake." The teller didn't argue. She didn't need to. She just pointed with her pen at another line. "Brooks Family Holdings Trust. Controlling interest." Derek's breath caught. The trust. The same protection paperwork Natalie had asked him to sign when he first started making real money. He remembered how he'd smirked, how he'd said, "Sure, whatever, babe, if it makes you feel better." He remembered how he hadn't read a single page. Because men like Derek didn't read things their wives handled. Men like Derek assumed the world would never punish them for being careless. He backed away from the counter like the air had thickened. The teller watched him with that careful expression employees use when a powerful man is becoming a public mess. Derek spun and walked out, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched so hard it ached. Outside, he sat in his car and gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. "How?" he whispered. Then his mind supplied the answer in a voice that sounded like Natalie's, calm and cold. "Because I planned." Derek pulled out his phone and dialed the one person he was sure would comfort him, Sienna Hart. She answered on the third ring with a soft laugh, like his crisis was a cute surprise. "Baby," she purred. "Back already? I thought you had." "I need you," Derek cut in, voice sharp. "Not like that." "I need help." There was a pause. Sienna's tone shifted just a fraction. "Help with what?" Derek swallowed. His pride hated the words, but desperation forced them out. "Natalie knows. She emptied the house, sold it. She took Ava. She froze my accounts." Silence. Not shocked silence. Not shocked silence. Calculating silence. Sienna exhaled slowly. "All of them?" "Yes." Sienna's voice thinned. "Derek, that's really intense." "I'm coming over," Derek said. "I need somewhere to stay until my lawyer fixes this." Another pause. Then Sienna spoke the sentence that made Derek's skin go cold. "I can't." Derek blinked. "What?" "My landlord is coming by today," she said quickly, like she'd rehearsed it. "And I have my cousin staying with me. It's not a good time." Derek's mouth tightened. "Sienna, I've spent—" "I know what you've spent," she snapped, losing the sweetness. "That was your choice." Derek's eyes narrowed. "Are you serious right now?" Sienna sighed dramatically. "I didn't sign up to be homeless with you. I didn't sign up for a wife who's psycho." Derek flinched at the word. Not because it insulted Natalie, because it implied Natalie had power. "Sienna," Derek said, forcing calm, "listen, I'll fix it. I just need a week." Sienna laughed once, short and sharp. "Call me when you have your life back." Then softer, like a final twist of the knife. "And don't come here. If your wife is tracking you, I'm not getting dragged into court." The line went dead. Derek stared at the phone. He'd thought Sienna was the reward for his risk. But she was just another mirror, reflecting what he was when money wasn't in the room. Disposable. Derek sat there for a long time, breathing through his anger. Then he did what men like Derek always did when they couldn't control women. He went to the place he believed proved his worth: work. Brooks Capital Partners occupied the top floors of a glass tower downtown. Steel, marble, and ego stacked into architecture. Derek's name sat on a brushed metal plaque near the lobby entrance. Founder and managing partner, Derek Brooks. He touched it as he walked in, like a ritual, like reassurance. The lobby receptionist looked up. Normally she greeted him with bright obedience. Today she looked like she'd been crying. "Mr. Brooks," she said, voice thin. Derek didn't slow. "Get Evan Caldwell in my office." "Now, sir," she said quickly. "Your key card." Derek slapped his access card against the executive elevator scanner. A red light blinked. "Access denied." He froze. He tried again. Red. His throat tightened, as if someone had wrapped a wire around it. "What did you do?" he demanded, staring at the receptionist like she was responsible. She shook her head. "It wasn't me. Mr. Caldwell and legal. They changed access permissions at 6 a.m. Derek's anger surged. "Evan works for me." The receptionist's eyes flicked away. "He said to ask you to wait in conference room C." Conference room C was the glass-walled room near the lobby. The fishbowl. The place they put interns when they messed up. Derek's face burned. He stormed toward it anyway, because the alternative was admitting fear. Inside the fishbowl, Evan Caldwell waited with two other people. One was the firm's general counsel, Denise Marlowe. The other was security. Evan stood when Derek entered, posture stiff and careful, like he was approaching a wild animal. "Derek," Evan said, voice controlled. "Sit down." Derek didn't. "What is this?" Denise slid a folder across the table, the same kind of folder Natalie had left in his kitchen. "Evidence." Derek stared at it, then at Evan. "Where did this come from?" Evan's jaw tightened. "Natalie." Derek's chest tightened so fast it almost felt like choking. Denise spoke, calm and lethal. Mrs. Brooks contacted legal last night. She provided documentation of personal expenditures charged to corporate accounts. Derek scoffed. That's ridiculous. Denise opened the folder and turned it toward him. Hotel invoices, luxury receipts, a screenshot of a corporate card statement with charges that read like a confession. Boutique jewelry, $8,600 Riverstone Hotel suite, $2940 car service, $410. Denise looked Derek dead in the eye. These were categorized as client development. Derek's mouth went dry. They were, Evan cut him off. They were for Sienna. Derek's eyes flashed. You don't know that. Evan leaned forward slightly. The receipt includes her name. Derek's stomach dropped. Denise continued, voice unchanged. The board convened an emergency meeting at 6. Pending investigation. You have been placed on administrative leave. Derek's laugh came out wrong, high and angry. Administrative leave? I am the board. Denise didn't blink. You are not. She slid another paper forward, a copy of the trust structure. Derek scanned it, and his blood turned cold. Because there it was in black and white. Brooks Family Holdings Trust controlling voting rights, and a signature line. His signature. Evan's voice was quieter now, almost sad. Your shares aren't as simple as you think. Derek swallowed. This is temporary. Denise shook her head once. There's more. She placed a new page on top. A notice of contract suspension. A major client pulling out. Derek stared at the logo and felt his heart pound harder. Because this client wasn't just money, it was status. Evan spoke carefully. They received an anonymous email with the documentation. Derek's lips parted. Anonymous, Denise corrected him. Not anonymous, traceable. It was sent from an account registered under Natalie Pierce, Natalie's maiden name. Derek's vision blurred. Natalie didn't just gather evidence, she weaponized it. She aimed it like a sniper. Evan's eyes flicked toward the security officer. Derek, we're going to have to escort you out. Derek's head snapped up. Excuse me. Company policy, Denise said. And Derek, do not contact staff. Derek's hands trembled. He wanted to flip the table. He wanted to scream. But something about Evan's face, tight, almost afraid, made Derek realize this wasn't a negotiation. The building had turned its back on him. Security stepped forward with a cardboard box. Inside was a pathetic collection of his personal effects, a framed photo from a gala where Natalie stood beside him smiling, a fountain pen, a stress ball with the firm's logo, a pair of cufflinks. Derek stared at the photo. Natalie's eyes in it looked warm. He wondered how many days she'd smiled like that while planning his demolition. As security walked him through the lobby, people stared, not in awe, not in respect, in curiosity. In that hungry way people look when a powerful man is finally bleeding. Derek marched outside into cold morning air. He threw the box into the passenger seat and started the engine. The Range Rover sputtered, then died. He tried again. Nothing. A message flashed on the dashboard. Remote immobilization active. Contact fleet admin. Derek's face drained. The car was leased under the firm, and the firm no longer belonged to him. He slammed the steering wheel, hard, once, twice. Then he sat there in silence, breathing like a man trying not to drown. Because now it wasn't just Natalie. It was everything. He had no house, no cash, no wife, no child. And now, no car. He stepped out, grabbed the box, and walked. Because what else could he do? He ended up at a cheap motel off the interstate, the kind of place with flickering neon and stained curtains. He paid for one night with the last credit card he had that still worked. Barely. Inside, he sat on the bed and stared at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. He grabbed it like a lifeline. But it wasn't Natalie. It was a notification. Card declined. He checked his wallet. 3 credit cards. All useless now. The only cash he had was what he'd forgotten in his suit pocket. $212. Derek's throat tightened. He wasn't a man in trouble. He was a man being erased. Across town, Natalie sat in a small rental house she'd booked under a different name, Ava sleeping beside her in a portable crib. The place was modest, clean, safe, forgettable. Natalie liked it that way. Forgettable meant untraceable. Her phone buzzed with a message from Arthur. He's trying the bank and office. You did it right. Stay quiet. Natalie stared at the words, then at her daughter. Ava's tiny fist was curled near her cheek, trusting the world the way babies do. Natalie pressed 2 fingers to Ava's hand gentle. I'm going to protect you, she whispered, because that's what this had always been. Not revenge. Protection. Natalie stood and opened a duffel bag in the closet. Inside were documents, copies of everything, the postnup, the trust paperwork, the evidence folder, birth certificate copies, a new phone, a life in pieces. She checked the window locks, then the back door. Then she sat at the table and opened her laptop. She didn't scroll social media. She didn't cry. She monitored, because Natalie knew Derek. And Derek Brooks didn't lose quietly. Back at the motel, Derek tried the police. He walked in unshaven, eyes bloodshot, desperation leaking through his expensive jacket like a stain. I need to report a kidnapping, he told the desk officer. The officer didn't even look surprised. He looked tired. Who's the child with? The officer asked. My wife, Derek said. Like that alone should be illegal. The officer nodded slowly. And is there a custody order? No, Derek snapped. Because we were married, the officer's tone stayed flat. Sir, the mother has legal rights to travel with her child, unless there's a court order stating otherwise. Derek's jaw tightened. She's hiding her. The officer looked him over. Broken glass cut on his hand, rumpled clothes, eyes too sharp. Do you have proof the child is in danger? Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. Because danger wasn't the truth. Control was. He left the station shaking with rage. His phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. You don't get to take my daughter. Derek stared at it, then typed back. Bring her back or I'll find you. He hit send. And for the first time, the threat felt empty. Because how do you hunt someone who planned your blindness? That night, Derek did something he'd never done in his life. He sold a piece of himself. He walked into a pawn shop with his watch. An investment piece he'd bragged about at dinners. The man behind the counter barely looked up. How much? Derek asked, voice tight. The pawnbroker examined it, unimpressed. No papers, I have papers, Derek lied. The man shrugged. $2,000. It's worth 10, Derek snapped. Not to me, the broker said. $2,000 cash. Take it or leave it. Derek's pride screamed, but his reality screamed louder. He took the money. And with that cash, he hired someone, a private investigator named Lila Grant. Her office was above a tire shop, and her handshake was firm in a way that made Derek feel like she could break bones without blinking. He slid an envelope of cash across her desk. I need you to find my wife, he said. She's hiding my daughter. Leela didn't flinch at the money or the drama. She flipped open a notebook. Start with the basics. Full name, Natalie Brooks, Derek said. Lila's pen paused. Maiden name, Derek swallowed. Natalie Pierce. Lila nodded once, like she already suspected that mattered. Last known movements, she asked. She sold the house, Derek said. Bitterness thick. She disappeared. Phones disconnected. Lila leaned back. People don't disappear, they reroute. Derek clenched his fists. I want her location. Leela's eyes sharpened. And when you get it, Derek hesitated. Because the honest answer was ugly. He wanted to break the door down the way he'd broken the glass. He wanted to grab Ava and prove he still mattered. Lila watched him carefully. Then she said, If you're looking to play hero, find another investigator. Derek forced his voice calm. I just want to talk. Lila's expression made it clear she didn't believe him. But she took the cash anyway. I'll start with paper trails, she said. Airports, rentals, storage units, anything under Pierce. Any new utilities, any PO boxes. Derek leaned forward. How long? 3 days, Lila said. If she's sloppy. If she's sloppy. Derek laughed without humor. She's not sloppy. Layla's eyes narrowed. Then it'll take longer. Derek left her office with 2 feelings fighting inside him. Hope and fear, because hope meant Natalie could be found. But fear meant Natalie had been planning far longer than he ever imagined. That night, Natalie rocked Ava in a dim room, the only light coming from a small lamp. Her phone buzzed again, a message from the same unknown number. You think you can erase me? Natalie stared at it. Her jaw didn't tremble. Her hands didn't. She typed one sentence back, and her words were calm enough to be terrifying. You erased yourself. I just closed the book. She hit send, then turned off the phone. Because the next move wasn't digital. It was physical. Natalie opened the closet again and pulled out a folded map, an old-school road map Arthur had insisted she keep. No GPS trail, no location sharing. Just roads. Just choices. She traced a route with her finger, slow and sure. Then she looked at her daughter and whispered, "One more move, baby." Then we're home. Back in Connecticut, Derek lay on the motel bed staring at the ceiling, listening to cars hiss past on wet pavement. He kept replaying every moment of the last year, every late meeting, every excuse, every time Natalie looked tired, and he called it dramatic. Now he understood something that made his stomach twist. Natalie didn't become dangerous when she found the affair. Natalie became dangerous when she realized Derek would never stop. On the third day, Lila Grant called. Derek answered on the first ring, breath caught. "You were right," Leela said. "She's not sloppy." Derek sat up. "Did you find her?" "I found a decoy," Lila replied. "She booked a flight under Natalie Pierce, but she never boarded." Derek's heart hammered. "Then what did she do?" Lila's voice tightened slightly, impressed despite herself. "She rented a car using the same identity, drove it 2 towns over, returned it early, then the trail splits." "Splits how?" Derek demanded. "There's a cash purchase at a bus station kiosk," Lila said. "No name, but timing matches. And there's one more thing." Derek held his breath. "A storage unit," Lila said. "Rented under Pierce. Started 2 months ago." 2 months. Natalie had been leaving him for 2 months, while smiling, while making dinner, while holding their daughter. Derek's voice came out raw. "Where's the unit?" Leela gave him the location. Then she added, "Derek, whatever you think you're going to do, understand this. She planned for you. She planned for your anger, your impulse, your ego." Derek didn't answer, because his mind was already somewhere else, inside that storage unit, inside Natalie's secrets. Because if Natalie had been preparing for 2 months, what else had she prepared? He hung up, grabbed his jacket, and drove a rented car toward the storage facility, as if the road could undo what he'd done. And as he pulled into the lot, under a sky the color of bruises, Derek saw one thing that made his chest lock up. A familiar SUV at the far end, parked crooked, like someone left fast. Derek stepped out slowly, heart pounding. On the windshield tucked into the wiper was a plain white envelope. No stamp, no return address, just his name in neat handwriting. Derek. His hand shook as he pulled it free. He opened it. Inside was a single photo. Natalie, holding Ava, standing beside a man Derek had never seen before. Tall, broad-shouldered hand resting gently on Natalie's back like he had every right in the world. And on the back of the photo, one sentence. "You're not the only one who can hire someone." Derek's breath caught, because suddenly, the story wasn't just about a wife escaping. It was about a wife building an army. If you're still watching, comment right now where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe to Stories Untold, because next part is where Derek follows the trail and discovers the one truth Natalie kept buried for years, the truth that makes her escape impossible to undo. If you're watching right now, say it in the comments. Where are you watching from? Because next part isn't the part where Natalie cries. It's the part where Derek realizes the woman he underestimated didn't just leave. She set an ending in motion that he can't outrun. The storage facility sat behind a row of tired warehouses and a diner that smelled like burnt coffee, gray sky, cold wind. A place nobody noticed, which was exactly why it was perfect. Derek stood in the gravel lot with that photo shaking in his hand, Natalie holding Ava, that man beside her. That sentence on the back like a thumb pressed into a bruise. You're not the only one who can hire someone. His first instinct was denial. His second was rage. His third, quiet, terrifying, was calculation. He looked around the lot. No cameras obvious enough to calm him, no employees outside. Just a few cars and the thin hum of traffic. Derek walked into the office and forced a polite smile at the board attendant behind bulletproof glass. "I'm here for my wife's unit," he said, like the word wife still belonged to him. The attendant barely looked up. "Name?" Derek hesitated for half a beat. "Natalie Pierce." The attendant's eyes lifted slowly, then drifted to a sticky note taped inside the window. Something in his expression changed, subtle but real. "We can't release anything without the account holder present," the attendant said. Derek leaned closer. "I'm her husband." The attendant's face stayed flat. "Then you should talk to your lawyer." Derek smiled with his teeth only. "I am talking to you." The attendant didn't flinch. "Leave, before I call someone." Derek stepped back, jaw pulsing. He walked out like he was done. Like he'd accepted it. Then he circled the building. Because Derek Brooks had never been the kind of man who accepted locked doors. Behind the facility, a chain-link fence sagged where a delivery truck had scraped it months ago. Derek didn't climb like a criminal. He climbed like a man who believed rules were for other people. He dropped into the storage rows, breath tight, eyes scanning unit numbers. Lila Grant had warned him. She planned for you. But Derek wasn't listening anymore. He found it at the far end. Unit 314. A red plastic seal hung from the latch. Not a padlock, a seal. The kind used when someone wants proof a door hasn't been touched. Derek stared at it and felt his stomach twist. Natalie didn't just rent storage, she protected it. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small pocket knife, and cut the seal. Snap! A tiny sound. But it echoed in his head like a verdict. He lifted the door. Metal screeched upward, and Derek froze, because the unit wasn't packed like a rushed escape. It was packed like a plan. Boxes stacked clean and labeled in thick black marker. Ava, Medical Ava. Close 06 Ava. Close 612 Legal. Originals Legal. Copies Financial. Trust Financial. Derek Spending Evidence. Printed Evidence. Digital Backup. There was even a small plastic bin labeled Derek Personal Effects. Return. Derek's throat went dry. This wasn't a woman running. This was a woman executing. On top of the legal box sat another envelope, not sealed, waiting. His name again in that neat handwriting. Derek? His fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was one page. Just one. A printed email. From Natalie to someone named Captain R. Holloway. Subject: confirm relocation timeline. Under it, a short reply. Approved. Move date confirmed. Protective order enforcement confirmed across state lines. Across state lines. Derek's chest tightened. Protective order enforcement across state lines meant Natalie wasn't just hiding. She was officially protected. He stepped deeper into the unit, breath coming faster. He grabbed the evidence digital backup box and ripped it open. Inside, a flash drive, neatly labeled. And a second one, and a third, redundant. The hallmark of a woman who'd already imagined failure and refused to leave room for it. He opened Financial, Trust. And there it was, the trust paperwork he'd signed without reading, highlighted in yellow. Tabs placed like a teacher grading a failing student. One clause was circled in pen. Fidelity breach. Immediate asset control transferred to injured spouse. Underneath, Natalie had written one line by hand. You signed away the right to surprise me. Derek felt a cold heat rise in his throat. He slammed the folder shut and looked around again. Then he noticed the last box. Evidence, Derek and Sienna. He didn't want to open it. Not because he feared the truth, but because he feared how thorough it would be. He opened it anyway. Photos, receipts, screenshots. Something that made his stomach drop through the floor. A copy of a corporate expense report. With Derek's approvals, with Sienna's name on the hotel invoice, the kind of document that didn't just ruin a marriage, it ruined a man. Derek backed out of the unit like it might bite him. Then, behind him, a slow clap. One clap, then another. Derek spun. A man stood at the end of the row, hands in his jacket pockets. Posture relaxed in a way that screamed training. Not a storage employee. Not a passerby. A watcher. He was tall, mid-40s, weathered face, eyes sharp as broken glass. Derek's voice came out strained. Who the hell are you? The man stepped closer, and Derek saw a badge clipped to his belt. Not police. Something else. The man spoke calmly. Unit 314 is under protection, Mr. Brooks. Derek's heart hammered. Protection from who? The man's gaze didn't change. From you, Derek swallowed hard. I'm her husband. The man tilted his head slightly. Not in any way that matters anymore. Derek's hands clenched. Where is she? The man's tone stayed steady. Walk away. Derek took a step forward, anger surging. You don't get to tell me what, Mr. Brimbin. Brooks, the man interrupted, voice suddenly colder. You just cut a tamper seal on a unit connected to an active protective order case. You're trespassing. And if you take one document, you're adding theft to your list. Derek's eyes flicked to the badge again. Who are you? He demanded. The man answered without pride, like it was just a fact. Captain Rowan Holloway, the name on the email. Derek's breath caught. Natalie wasn't just working with a lawyer. She had law enforcement in her corner. Holloway's eyes narrowed. Leave, now! Derek's voice cracked with fury. Tell Natalie she can't do this. Holloway's expression hardened. She already did. Derek drove away shaking. Not because he was afraid, because he was realizing piece by piece that Natalie wasn't hiding from him. She was building a wall around Eva, and Derek was the reason it needed to exist. He pulled into a fast food parking lot, hands trembling on the wheel, and called Lila. She picked up on the first ring. "Did you go to the storage unit?" she asked immediately. Derek's jaw tightened. "I found something." Lila exhaled, controlled frustration. "Derek, listen carefully. If she is enforcement involved, you're not playing the same game anymore." Derek's voice was raw. "Where did she go?" Lila paused. Then she said the words that felt like someone dropped him into ice water. "Maine." Derek blinked. "Maine, Portland first," Lila said. "Then further north." She used a bus ticket under the Pierce name. No camera clear enough for a face. But the timing is tight. Derek's grip tightened. "Why Maine?" Lila's voice softened just slightly. "Because you'd never look there, because it's cold, remote, quiet." Derek stared out at the gray sky. Then he remembered the photo again. The man beside Natalie, the hand on her back. "Who is he?" Derek asked, voice low. Layla hesitated. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I know this. He's not random." Derek's mouth tightened into something ugly. "Good," he said. "Then I'll find them both." Layla's voice sharpened. "Derek, don't do this." If there's a protective order, Derek hung up. Because when men like Derek lose control, they don't become quiet, they become reckless. 2 days later, Derek crossed into Maine under a sky that looked like it wanted to punish the earth. He didn't dress like himself. No tailored coat, no polished shoes. He wore a flannel jacket and a knit cap pulled low, like a man trying to disappear. But the problem was, Derek had never learned how to be invisible. He checked into a cheap motel outside a coastal town where tourists came in summer and locals survived winter. Then he waited. He watched grocery store parking lots, pharmacies, gas stations, places mothers had to go, places Natalie couldn't avoid forever. And on the third day he saw her, Natalie stepped out of a small market carrying a paper bag and holding Eva against her chest. Eva was older than he remembered, bigger, sturdier, cheeks rounder. Derek's throat tightened. For half a second, something human tried to rise in him. Regret. Then it drowned under something darker. Ownership. Natalie didn't look like the woman he'd left behind. Her hair was darker, pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup, no jewelry, but her eyes were steady. She looked tired, but peaceful, like she could breathe. A man walked out behind her, the same man from the photo, tall, broad shoulders, hands rough, not wealthy, not polished. But he moved like someone who knew how to protect. He took the bag from Natalie's hands without asking. Then he touched the small of her back like it was natural, like it was allowed. Derek's stomach turned. He followed them at a distance, through winding roads, past trees heavy with snow, up a narrow lane where tire tracks carved into white like scars. Then he saw it. Not a forever home, a real home. Warm light in the windows, smoke from the chimney, a porch swing. It was the kind of life Derek always claimed he provided, but never actually gave. Derek sat in his car and watched. Natalie moved inside, silhouette crossing windows with Eva in her arms. So Zoe, the man, Derek's mind insisted, chopped wood outside with an axe. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Each strike felt like a countdown. Derek's phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number again. "Don't." Derek stared at it, then looked up at the cabin and smiled, because the message confirmed one thing. Natalie knew he was close. He texted back one word, "Watch me." Night fell early, the wind sharpened. Derek waited until the cabin quieted, until the lights dimmed, until the outside chopping stopped. Then he moved. He didn't walk up to the door like a civilized man. Civilized men didn't break glass at 4 a.m. Derek circled the cabin and found what he was looking for. A generator shed, an exterior breaker, a way to control the light. He pulled the main switch. The cabin went dark. Inside, a muffled gasp. Then a man's voice. Calm, controlled. "Power's out. Stay inside." A flashlight beam cut through the snow as the man stepped out, heading toward the shed. Derek waited until the man disappeared behind it. Then he moved to the front door. It was locked. Of course it was. Derek reached into his pocket. Not a key, a slim tool. Because after losing everything, he'd learned one thing. Locks are just confidence. He worked the latch carefully. Click. The door opened. Warm air hit him, thick with the smell of wood smoke and something that made his stomach twist. Roasted chicken, a family dinner smell. A life Derek didn't deserve. Derek stepped inside. He closed the door behind him and locked it. Then he moved toward the living room where firelight flickered. Natalie sat on the rug near the fireplace with Ava beside her on a blanket, little hands grabbing at a soft toy. Natalie looked up. Her face didn't crumple. Her mouth didn't open in shock. Her eyes narrowed just slightly, like she'd been expecting him. "Derek," she said quietly. Derek's voice rasped. "Hi, Nat." Natalie's hand went to Ava, instantly pulling her close. Derek took another step. "You really thought you could disappear with my daughter?" he hissed. Natalie stood slowly, body turning so she shielded Ava without even thinking. "She's not your property," Natalie said. Derek's jaw clenched. "You stole my house, my accounts, my life." Natalie's gaze didn't move. "I took the life you were draining from us." Derek's chest rose and fell hard. He saw a fireplace poker leaning by the stone hearth. His hand reached for it like instinct. Natalie's eyes flicked to it. "Don't," she warned. Derek grabbed it anyway. Ava whimpered at the tension, tiny face scrunching. Derek stepped forward. "Give her to me." Natalie's voice cut through the room like ice. "No." Derek's grip tightened on the poker. Then the front door slammed open so hard it banged against the wall. A beam of light pinned Derek's eyes. The man stood there, not with an axe, with a shotgun. Derek froze. The man's voice was calm, terrifyingly steady. "Drop it." Derek blinked hard against the light. "Who the hell are you?" "Drop it," the man repeated. Derek's pride rose like poison. "This is my wife." The shotgun lifted a fraction. Click, clack, a sound that doesn't negotiate. Derek's poker hit the floor. Natalie exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath since the day she found the bracelet receipt. The man stepped inside, boots heavy, flashlight still trained on Derek. "Hands on your head," he ordered. Derek's hands rose. His voice came out strained. "You think you're a hero? You think you can replace me?" The man's eyes stayed hard. "I'm not replacing you," he said. Natalie stepped closer, one hand on Ava, the other on the edge of the table to steady herself. "He doesn't know," she said softly to the man. Then Natalie looked at Derek and her voice turned almost sad. "You never asked," she told him. Derek's brow furrowed. "Asked what?" And Natalie's eyes glistened, not with tears, with truth. "About my family," she said. Derek swallowed. "You said you didn't have anyone." Natalie corrected him. "I said I was estranged." The man lowered the flashlight just enough for Derek to see his face clearly. Same eyes, same shape around the mouth. A resemblance Derek couldn't deny. Natalie spoke the sentence that landed like a hammer. "This is my brother. You said they wouldn't fit." Derek's mouth opened, then closed, because he remembered. He'd said it like it was normal, like it was acceptable, like Natalie's roots were embarrassing. Caleb stepped forward, shotgun steady. "I called the sheriff when the power went out," he said. Silent alarm. Derek's breath caught. "No." Natalie's voice was soft but final. "Yes." Outside, sirens cut through the woods. Red and blue lights flashed against snow like a warning from God. Derek backed up instinctively, and Caleb moved in front of Natalie like a wall. A deputy pushed inside seconds later. Then another. "Derek Brooks," one asked. Derek's throat tightened. "Yes, you're under arrest for violating a protective order, breaking and entering, and aggravated trespass," the deputy said, snapping cuffs onto Derek's wrists. Derek's voice cracked. "This is my family." Natalie held Ava tighter and looked at him. Really looked. "You stopped being family when you made me unsafe," she said. Derek struggled, anger burning. "You planned this." Natalie's eyes didn't blink. "Yes," she said. "Because you were predictable." The deputy pulled Derek toward the door. Derek twisted his head back, voice raw. "Natalie, you can't keep her from me." Natalie didn't scream. She didn't gloat. She just whispered, quiet enough that only Derek would hear. "I didn't keep her from you." She paused. "You left her first." 3 weeks later, Derek sat in a courtroom in Maine wearing a borrowed suit that didn't fit. His hands were cuffed to a chain at his waist. He looked smaller. Not physically, spiritually. Arthur Keene sat 3 rows ahead with Natalie and Caleb. Natalie wore a simple sweater, Ava asleep in her arms. She looked like a woman who'd finally stepped out of a storm. Derek's new lawyer, court-appointed, exhausted, leaned in and whispered, "They're stacking charges." Derek swallowed. "This is civil, divorce, custody." The lawyer's eyes flicked to him like he was slow. It stopped being civil when you crossed state lines to violate a protective order and broke into a residence with a weapon in hand, he said. They can make this criminal fast. Derek's heart pounded. Then the prosecutor stood. And Derek's blood ran cold. Because the prosecutor didn't start with the cabin. She started with Derek's office. With the court's permission, she said, "We'd like to introduce evidence of financial crimes connected to Mr. Brooks' employment." Derek jerked forward. "What?" His lawyer grabbed his sleeve. "Derek, no." The prosecutor continued calmly, flipping pages like she was reading the weather. Misuse of corporate funds, false expense categorization, fraudulent reporting, potential tax violations. Derek's mouth went dry. He looked at Natalie, disbelief twisting his face. Natalie met his gaze, and for the first time she didn't look like his wife. She looked like his consequence. The judge's voice was flat. "Mr. Brooks, do you understand the seriousness of these allegations?" Derek's voice came out hoarse. "This is her doing." Natalie didn't react. Arthur Keene stood and spoke with quiet precision. "Your Honor, Mrs. Brooks did not fabricate anything," he said. "She submitted records," Mr. Brooks signed himself. Derek's vision blurred, because suddenly the affair wasn't the biggest problem. It was the sloppiness, the arrogance, the belief he could take whatever he wanted and stamp it as business. And Natalie had seen it, cataloged it, saved it, like receipts in a box labeled "ending." The judge said bail conditions strict, no contact, no travel, surrender passport, monitoring. Then the judge looked directly at Derek. "Any attempt to approach Mrs. Brooks or the child will result in immediate incarceration pending trial," he said. Derek's chest heaved. He turned his head as deputies led him away. Natalie didn't look back. She didn't need to. That night, Natalie sat at the cabin table with Caleb and Arthur on speakerphone. Ava slept in a portable crib near the fire. Arthur's voice came through the phone, steady. "The relocation petition is approved. Full temporary custody remains with you." Natalie closed her eyes for a second. "Not relief, release." Caleb poured her tea like he'd done it 100 times. "You okay?" he asked softly. Natalie stared at the fire. "No," she said honestly, "but we're safe." Caleb nodded once. "That's the point." Natalie looked at Ava. Then she whispered the truth she'd never said out loud before, because saying it would have made it real. "I loved him," she said. "At the beginning." Caleb's eyes softened. "I know." Natalie swallowed, voice tightening just a fraction. "But loving someone doesn't mean you're allowed to disappear inside them." Caleb reached across the table, squeezed her hand once, then let go. Natalie stood, walked to Ava's crib, and watched her daughter breathe. Then she picked up her phone and opened one last draft message to Derek. She stared at it for a long time, then deleted it, because Derek didn't deserve closure. Ava did. Natalie returned to the table and opened a fresh notebook. On the first page, she wrote a title, "Safe Harbor," then, underneath, "New routines, new rules, new life." She didn't know what the future would look like yet. But she knew what it wouldn't look like. It wouldn't look like excuses at midnight. It wouldn't look like perfume on collars. It wouldn't look like her daughter learning love means tolerating disrespect. Natalie closed the notebook. Outside, snow fell quietly, covering tire tracks, erasing evidence, softening the world. Inside, Natalie finally exhaled. If this story hit you, hit like, subscribe to Stories Untold, and comment where you're watching from, because the next story is always closer than people think. And remember, the most dangerous moment isn't when a woman finds out. It's when she goes quiet and starts planning.